Well, welcome back to another wonderful episode of Business to Business. I'm Kinsey, your host, and I've got my co-host.
My name's Tina. Glad to be here.
And we are so excited because we have the amazing Miss Marsha Gonzaga with us today. And we've also got our co-host, Nolan, and he's going to be taking the reins of this interview today. Nolan, what are we going to be learning and talking about today?
We're going to be learning about Marsha's background within her career of getting a master's, career coaching, counseling, and etc.
Okay, awesome. Well, Marsha, we are so glad to have you on our show today, and we want to go ahead and turn it over to Nolan to kick things off.
So my first question for you is, let's talk about your background. You got your undergrad degree at University of Oklahoma, then pursued your master's at Arizona State University. What led you to getting a master's after your undergrad degree? At WKU, we offer 4 graduate programs of MBA, cyber, econ, and accounting.
Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to chat with all 3 of you. And thank you for the questions, Nolan. So to answer your question, what led to my decision to get my master's after my undergraduate, I kind of have to go back to the fact that I am a first-generation American. And it's common in my upbringing with Filipino parents that they tell you what you're going to do for your career. Funny enough, I was supposed to be a lawyer for the family. And I did what was called, and even before it was a thing, called an informational interview, which I always encourage. And essentially an informational interview is just you asking questions to people that are in an industry that you're genuinely curious about. And so I did an informational interview well before college with a couple of lawyers because I was like, oh, okay, that's what I'm supposed to do. And one of them told me straight up, he's like, you have the right intentions of helping, but law might not be the right fit. So that's where my search began. And I was a Division I student athlete at the University of Oklahoma. So my sport of golf, which is essentially year-round because you have fall and spring competitions as well as individual national events throughout the summer. So I had to really lean on opportunities that would work with my academic and athletic schedule. Mm-hmm. And so I pursued research assistantships and teaching assistantships with my psychology professors. And I already had in mind that I wanted to pursue a counseling-related field, a very helping field. And it was one of my psych professors that encouraged me that I look into counseling programs, looking in graduate school programs across the nation. And I did get accepted in a couple of PhD programs, but I was waitlisted at Arizona State, funny enough, for my doctorate. And I actually chose to pursue my master's at ASU because of the faculty and their research. And I think that's important when anybody's looking at any master's program. Look at the faculty of influence. And I think that will help guide any decision. But I knew straight up I wanted to be in a counseling field.
Awesome. We are getting really heavy in the Gordon Ford College of Business in research. Our cybersecurity program has taken off. Our business data analytics program has taken off. And we've got professors that are definitely really dedicated to their research. So that's really exciting to hear you say that.
Yeah, those are great fields, by the way.
Oh, yes.
Cybersecurity, yeah. And even AI, if you go that route, too.
Oh, big on AI. We're learning all the things about AI. Now that you mentioned that, how are you using any AI in what you're currently doing?
It's funny that you say that. Some of my posts, I'll even use AI to create content whenever I'm sharing about jobs or even looking through, like you can even use AI with your resumes too. Mm-hmm. So, but I don't encourage the whole thing, but like if you're having trouble with making a statement on a resume, AI can come to the rescue there.
Oh, definitely. It's all about the prompts.
Yes.
So moving on to the next question, you said that you were a grad assistant or a TA helping out teachers. Is that kind of what helped you lead into the role of the counselor? Because I looked at your background and you kind of jumped around throughout Arizona State time of counselor in this role, moving on to a different role, et cetera.
Yes, and yes. As far as the teaching side of it, it sounds, when I say teaching assistant, it probably sounds like grander than it is. And I don't have delusions of grandeur by any means when I use the word assistantship or teaching assistantship of any sort. I was it just gave me exposure. And I think that's what's important for any student to really grab on to. It could be a micro internship, a part-time job, even a job shadow, to really get the opportunity to gain experience, gain knowledge, so to help somebody make an informed decision on which path to go. And so whenever I was at ASU, I did not only, when I got in the program, but funny enough, it was all through my network, I got a assistantship because the person that managed the counseling center, she was an Oklahoma Sooner herself. And so we hit it off right away. And then they had an opportunity there. So as far as like the different roles, what led me to, going the counseling route, I really would say I got the opportunity to teach because I had an interest in it, but counseling was really ultimately the skills I naturally had, just personally.
Awesome.
And then, Nolan, did you ask what was my favorite role? I wasn't sure if you already asked that.
Yes, I did.
Okay, so what was my favorite role? When I was actually years later, I after I got through my assistantships, achieved my master's, worked in athletics at UC Irvine, and came back to Arizona State. And one of the roles I had prior to my current one was I was actually working in the School of Business, the W.P. Carey School of Business at Arizona State. And what was interesting there, I was working in the career department, so working with undergraduate students, and I had a variety of different experience there. And I think that was really helpful for me to not only dive in one position, I was able to teach a class of 360 people, also manage over 20 sections of classes. So I had some leadership experience because I had 10 different instructors, essentially reporting to me about, the course and whatnot. So I was able to have that side of the house, be a career counselor to different types of majors, you name it. And that School of Business, which now I think has over 25,000 students there, which is crazy for me to even think about. And then also working with corporate partners, working with corporate clients, hearing what are they looking for as far as what the employees that they're looking for. And so I got more of that experience, which helps me in my job today. And then also the opportunity to co-write a book for an instructional guide, basically for a New York Times bestselling author. So I was able to help support his book out there by writing a guide that would be applicable to classrooms.
That's wonderful. I love what you said about it's all about the experience and getting yourself as many experiences. I know in today's world, we look at resumes and sometimes people say, oh, there's certain generations that tend to jump around jobs and, try this and try that. But I think it's all about finding what you want to do. You've got to try it to figure out what exactly it is, if it's going to make you happy or, be something that you want to do for long term. So I love that.
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, that's right. So you're now a career coach to athletes, at athletes to careers. Tell us what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Oh, wow. Well, every day changes. It is definitely, I will say, full circle for me, having been a former Division I student athlete, having worked in athletics as well, and then also having nearly 20 years of experience in a career support type of role. But essentially what I get to do is I get to meet with student athletes across the nation who are making the transition from sport to their professional careers. And I get to match them up with my corporate partners. And it's awesome because Athletes to Careers, we have well over 200 business clients, which are national, multinational, or even regional clients. And so there's a range of opportunities across a variety of industries where I'm helping make sure that these student athletes, and they don't have to even be current student athletes. I work with people with experience too. They could be former student athletes, where I get to help kind of match make them. But it's definitely it's very fulfilling because it is a full circle, using my background and experience to do what I get to do today.
Nolan, that's right up your alley. Our sports guy.
Yes.
I'll say that's one thing I've definitely learned is the connections throughout the athletic universe. It just comes around and goes in circles.
Absolutely.
I'll say, so going into my next question, education is very, very important, especially after the life of being an athlete. We also look at it as a business landscape. How have you been able to contribute within the regards of business?
So I will say I am a continuous learner, and I think that's important for anybody in any career to always uh, be in the process of learning a new skill or growing in whatever position they're in. Many people are familiar with the Clifton Strengths Assessment. My top was a learner. That was the top of my list. So how I've helped in the business landscape, there's so many different ways, whether it's the networking piece, connecting. I mean, if I'm naturally in my job, have to be a connector, but I think teaching, whether you're faculty, you could be a formal faculty member or informally teaching a workshop. But how I've helped in the business landscape is really in the teaching perspective. I've taught large classes, I've taught small classes, but if anything, teaching others things related to careers and how they can be in the driver's seat, essentially, of their career has been what's been important to me in helping in the business landscape, but also working with the corporate partners that I do is making those connections to the people that I get to teach as well.
Awesome. You mentioned Clifton Strength Finders. Do you
Yes.
do you have your athletes take that before they take on a position, or?
Oh, no, I don't. It's just something that I personally pursued.
Oh yeah, no,
But
totally.
some of them already know that. Yeah, some departments, or some athletic departments, they'll have them do that just to see what they, bring to the team, which I think is awesome.
Oh yeah, I've worked previous jobs and they've been really big on that. When we connect on LinkedIn, you'll be able to see my top 5 too. So,
Oh, nice.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So when going back to the part about skills you talked about, what are the most important ones you think employers are looking for within the universe of just hiring athletes or in general?
Whether it's athletes or in general, you could ultimately look at, if you've ever heard of NACE, which is short for National Association of Colleges and Employers, you could look at their laundry list of skills that employers are saying, this is specifically what we're looking for. However, in my experience working with athletes, I would say a strong or disciplined work ethic. I think that goes without saying, being a student athlete. And ultimately, I like to say leadership, because leadership, if you're in a leadership role, whether you're leading a project, you're team captain, you're part of the student athlete advisory committee, whatever that looks like in leadership, there's so many different skills that come from that. Problem solving, being able to communicate or delegate, teamwork is important. Just being able to be a self-starter and initiating. Those are definitely skills that can stem off of leadership. But I think between the two, of having a strong or disciplined work ethic and leadership, I think those are great skills because you have stories to tell. But it's not only sharing what skills you do have, but being able to articulate the skills that you have by sharing your value, like tracking any metrics and how you made or make an impact. I really believe that sharing your literal value will help you make your claim of whatever skill set it is more credible while interviewing. So tracking those metrics are essential when you're sharing your story.
I'll say, so that leads me into kind of a next question of me being involved in athletics, obviously. If I was to walk into your office today to talk about my professional career, my sports is ending, I'm trying to move on to get a real job that I can pursue, what would you tell me?
Well, beyond working with Marsha Gonzaga at Athletes to Careers, I would say, and you kind of alluded this earlier, Nolan, is networking. And I feel like that word gets a bad rap because everybody thinks, oh, networking, it's just gotten a negative connotation for some reason. But honestly, it's all about building relationships. When you're networking with others, I know I have personally benefited from the connections that I've made across the sports community, but it's such a small network, smaller than you think, because somebody knows somebody that knew somebody. And so the networking piece is not only connecting with others to build genuine quality relationships, but people naturally want to help other people. And if you come top of mind because you built a recent relationship and then they connect with somebody else, it's not just who you know, it's who they know as well. And they could be just a natural advocate for you because you had such a great relationship. I have way too many stories beyond, a 15-minute call of where my networking experiences has gotten me to where I'm at today. And even in this position that I'm in now, started 18 years ago. So through a network. So it's amazing how networking can really bring you to where you want to be. And so really investing in quality relationships, I think, is important.
I would have to agree with that. My husband works in the career center here, and also worked at your rival school, Oklahoma State University. We both actually worked in career services, and he worked in the Center for Student Athletes in the tutoring section for a while. But now when he's meeting with students, when they're working on their resumes, and then actually after that, looking for a job, he really has to convince them to just get off of their computer and quit just searching online for jobs. And showing them this pyramid that the vast majority of jobs are just exactly what you say, through networking and through who you know, and fostering those relationships. But it's so much easier, I think, in this day and age for people just to click on a computer and think this is how they're going to get their job, when it's, it does take those relationships and putting yourself out there.
Yeah. And to your point, when you're going online and looking for jobs, you're competing against the world, basically. Mm-hmm. And so those relations are really going to be important, because it's going to kind of funnel who and what and where, because people get to know you and know what you're about. And they're pretty much doing what I'm doing, is really that connecting piece. Mm-hmm. I just get to do it for a job.
So going on to the part of you talking about you have so many success stories, is there any certain one you'd like to share with us today?
Yes, I'd be happy to. I can share a recent one in my current role, where actually I was working with an athlete at Ole Miss, and she asked me to help her brother, and I was like, okay, that's fine. I take referrals. That's great. And he actually was a former minor league baseball player who was cut during the time of COVID. So he went back to school to finish his degree. And when I had started working with him, he had already applied to well over 300 jobs with very, very little success. He had a couple of interviews, but it didn't lead to anything. So I knew something was wrong right away. So I go through that normal process of finding out what he's about, understanding him as a person, and what does he value, so I can really align that with what corporate partners I have in my portfolio to make sure there's a good match. We went over his resume, updated his resume, and then he was very focused on certain jobs that I think most student athletes, and Nolan, you might be able to attest to this, most student athletes hear about, med device. I don't want to put down med device, because I love med device. My dad was a doctor, so I definitely, I understand that space, but and I was like, you need to open up your eyes a little bit more in the market. And I recognized that he had such leadership potential by having, met with him for 2, 3, 4 hours, having conversations with him. And I opened it up to companies that weren't even on his radar. And he fell in love with one specific company. So I was able to place him with that company last June. And it was a general manager trainee program, which was supposed to be a 2-year program. Mm-hmm. And within 7 months, he's already been promoted.
That's awesome.
And so, so that was definitely a more recent success that I've had in my current role at Athletes to Careers.
Awesome. Well, I know that resumes and things like that, and the ability to sell yourself is important amongst not only student athletes, but just in general. What tips can you offer to any listeners who might not know what next step to take when it comes to preparing for the job hunt?
Okay. Beyond the networking piece, I would encourage that just start having conversations. And I know it's scary because you're talking about things that are personal when it comes to that job search process, but you can start with warm leads. Talk to your professors. They talk to people out in the community, talk to family members. You can utilize services that I offer, like Athletes to Careers, but start having conversations about what you're interested in. Because those it's interesting how even entry level positions out there, it's such a competitive market that employers, even in an entry level role, will search for somebody that has some experience when some candidates have none. And so knowing that you're having these conversations with the right people can connect you to a larger network. But like I said earlier, people will naturally want to help and advocate for you, but it's easier to do that with a captive audience. That's why I say go to your professors, because they have this thing that's called office hours. So they're already there. So that might be an easier ask. And then start practicing there. But having those conversations and getting a better understanding will help you make a more informed decision. And then there's always career events that happen, whether they're on campus or in the community. Those are definitely helpful for you to tap into as well. So those will be a couple places that I would start. But if you need services, there's always, staffing placement services out there that are helpful. I've just been in a career related role for, a couple of decades. So I've seen some things, heard things, and I think the relationships are what's most important.
Awesome. Wonderful.
So that is a great insight for our viewers to know as they go into the job hunt. And thank you very much for joining us on this podcast today.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yep. Thanks again so much for being with us on Business to Business.